Hi all, continuing our look at the evolution of chess style, I'd like to draw your attention historically to the first World Correspondence Chess Championship of 1950. This is information from ChessGames.com. Following the foundation of the International Correspondence Chess Union, the IFSB, in Berlin on the 2nd of December 1928, the idea of a correspondence chess championship was discussed for the first time. Alexander Alekhine, who had played numerous games of correspondence chess in his youth, held it in high regard and became a driving force to see the realization of a correspondence championship. In August 1936, an IFSB conference resolved to set up a committee to work out a draft for Alekhine's ideas and brought them to fruition. A year later, in August 1937, at another IFSB conference in Stockholm, a resolution to create and regularly hold a correspondence championship was reached. Among those present at this conference were FIDE President Dr. Alexander Rube and Dr. Max Erver. The outbreak of the Second World War in 1939 delayed plans, but eventually in 1947, the preliminaries for the World Correspondence Championship started. There were 78 participants from 22 countries in 11 preliminary groups. This led to a final tournament of 15 players. Play for this commenced on May the 1st, 1950, with the tournament finishing on March the 31st, 1953. So this is before the advent of chess engines and correspondence chess. It was those who kind of put in more work themselves personally, much more work themselves personally, rather than having super intelligent kind of resources that could like play better moves than us in like a millionth of a second. So back then, you know, this was hard work. And I'm going to have a look here at a player called Cecil Purdy. Well, he was the winner, so why not? Now, Cecil Purdy, Cecil John Seddon Purdy, he actually, fascinatingly, there's some background again at ChessGames.com about him. He's going to be playing white in this game, and yeah, there's some information about him, but curiously, from my perspective, well, and of general interest first, he was actually awarded the over-the-board IM title in 1951. It was quite common in early correspondence to have quite prestigious over-the-board players playing it. And he got the GMC title in 1953 when he won the first World Correspondence Championship. He won the New Zealand Championship twice as well, 1924-25, 1935-36, and was the Australian champion on 4 occasions. So this is quite a major over-the-board player. He was also Australian Correspondence Champion in 1940 and 48. Yeah, from my perspective, he was also, by the way, the founder, editor and publisher of a magazine, a splendid magazine apparently, between 1929 and to 1967, which went through 3 incarnations. The Australian Chess Review, so that was the first incarnation, 1929 to 44, Czech, between 1944 and 45, and Chess World, between 1946 and 67. And as you know, my site's called chessworld.net, which is a correspondence chess server. So I think that's kind of strange, ironic. Anyway, so let's have a look at one of his correspondence games. And yeah, it's not like an easy game to look at, but I think it's worth looking at. It's quality stuff. C4, the English opening from Cecil. E5, knight c3, knight f6. Now we have knight f3, knight c6. And here we see the move d4. And this leads to some sharp play now. After e takes d4. Yeah, black didn't want to play for e4. Maybe that pawn's a bit too weak there. So we have e takes d4, knight takes d4, and potentially white's got nice pressure on this d file now. We have this annoying pin though, bishop b4. Now white is not too concerned structurally here. Cecil plays g3, is not too concerned about double pawns. but the opponent tries to torture him instead tactically with knight e5, hitting c4, so quite annoying. But now we have a move which safeguards c4 and avoids the pawns being potentially doubled. But now a little trappy move, queen e7. Yes, in the correspondence time chess, you can get the time to look at the little tricks like knight d3 check here. That's parried here with bishop e3. And white here stands a little bit better. You can see the control of d5 is quite good. White's avoided structural damage. This fianchetto bishop will also help exert influence over the centre. Black again plays tactically here with knight e4. Well, potentially I guess you could argue positioning as well if he's going to double pawns. But the response is quite strong, it seems. Knight db5, safeguarding against structural damage and hitting c7. Now black does relinquish actually the dark square bishop here. This is quite a committal move. Bishop takes c3 check. So white's dark square bishop later could be a beast. It could have no opponent, basically, virtually no opponent. Now, and also with white not having structural damage, this is a long-term trump card in the position. We see knight c5 and now a nice little pin against the queen. So this is inconvenient for black, because if black is also with the queen on e7, it's looking a bit silly. There's knight d5 to kick it. We see knight e6 offering an exchange of queens. White takes that, and he has a significant advantage here out of the opening, just at move 12. This is quite a significant advantage. c4 is safeguarded. Knight g4, the opponent is pushing him around for the moment, but it's only short-term threats. Bishop d2, knight d4, threatening knight c2 check. That's parried. But the pieces are going to be evicted back. These pesky knights on the 5th, they're going to be kicked back, and white's still left with a strong long-term trump card, this dark square bishop. So we see rook e8, bishop g2. And yeah, it looks bad for black. Black's about to be pushed back soon. This first knight is pushed back. Goes to e5, not too far back for the moment. Okay, white castles. d6. Now rook fd1, and you can see here immediately that bishop g5 check is now threatened, hitting the knight. The knight goes back, so yeah, the knight's getting pushed back now. Bishop e3, and you can see the rooks are beautiful here compared to black's rooks, and white is threatening c5, among other things. Black safeguards against that a little bit, holding up the c5 square, but white has a beautiful position. Look at these bishops, and the king misplaced. b4 to play for c5, among other things. a5 discourages c5, and now actually the c5 plan, instead of playing a3 to pursue a c5 plan, we see a different plan, b5. So the target here is to play b6 and weaken d6. I mean, the king's on d8 there as a bonus. We see king e7. Yeah, black's pretty, look at this position, it's just pretty bad because that bishop's glaring down here. It's just a very bad position. b6. So structural damage for black here. Temporary pawn sack, rook b1. Knight f6, rook takes b6. Glorious pressure on d6. Not glory yet. Rook d8. Now white takes this pawn on b7. Yeah, I mean, this is a lot of pressure. Look at d6 and b7. It's just a beautiful position. So white takes that pawn. Okay, and now knight d5 check is a neat little move to get rid of the rooks, with leaving white with a nice pawn on d5, which actually in this position works well with this dark square bishop. It's complementary to the dark square bishop, and black, a pawn down, is not keen to have the knight coming off the bishop. He tries to keep the knight on, but now this move bishop b6, this bishop's kind of a monster here. It's tying the rook down to a5 now. Knight e8, rook d2, we have a4, e4, rook b8, bishop d4. It's just a beautiful position for white. This bishop is fantastic within this structure. We have g6. And yeah, this is going to lead to paralysis on the king side if white can establish a pawn on g5. which is now a plan coming up soon after the exchange of rooks here. Bishop drops back here on this beautiful diagonal. The knight's not doing anything much at the moment, and that's not going to change here for a while. King comes to the center, and yeah, this g4 g5 just to restrict these pawns, fix them down. a3 fixes down the knight. The knight's not really got any great career prospects in this position, and here g5 fixes down the kingside pawn, so black's going to get in a kind of zugzwang now. After knight a6, we see definitely a zugzwangy move. Bishop a7. Whatever black does, he's in big trouble now. The pawn's being restricted. If king a5, white can break through with e5 with this dangerous winning passed pawn. If knight c5, white can just take that and then play f4. It's just a zugzwang position, just to show you. So yeah, white had resigned there. f4 is just winning. White's going to get this c4 square with his king, and that'll be it. It'll be easy to break through with e5. I mean, he's won a pawn from earlier. So a very, very nice positional game. Very, very strong game there by Cecil Purdy, demonstrating, you know, he's accumulating long-term trump cards. This was like a Steinitzian correspondence game. But of course, he's a very, very strong over-the-board player as well. This is before, you know, chess engines. So serious correspondence chess, backed by initially, you know, Alexander Alekhine, one of the greatest, you know, over-the-board world chess champions. So it was his plans that started to be put in place after the Second World War. So this was the precursor to what is the modern ICCF, the International Correspondence Chess Federation. This organization was organizing the correspondence, the International Correspondence Chess Union, IFSB. So yeah, I think he's got some fascinating games, and he said some fantastic quotations actually about chess. So this is a person, if you think about it, in two different chess disciplines excelled, both over the board and correspondence. So very interesting character in the history of the game, Cecil Purdy. And I think we should have a look at a few more of his games actually. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.